The Yakuza are often talked about in whispers. They are Japan's famous organized crime groups. Think of them like the mafia in Italy or America, but with a very Japanese flavor. For many years, they have been a part of Japan's society, operating in the shadows. They are known for their strict codes of conduct and their very distinctive full-body tattoos. These groups are not just simple street gangs. They are complex organizations with deep roots in Japanese history. Understanding them means looking back centuries to a time very different from today. Their story is one of outcasts, power, and a strange kind of honor. These groups call themselves Ninkyo Dantai. This term means chivalrous organizations. They like to see themselves as protectors of the weak, a modern version of the samurai spirit. However, the police and the public often see them differently. To law enforcement, they are Boryokudan, which means violent groups. This name points to their involvement in crime, such as extortion, gambling, and drug trafficking. So, there are two sides to how the Yakuza are viewed, and both have some truth to them. They operate in a gray area of Japanese life, sometimes tolerated, sometimes hunted. The Yakuza are not a single group. There are many different families or clans spread across Japan. Some are very large, with thousands of members. Others are smaller, local operations. The biggest and most well-known groups include the Yamaguchi-gumi, the Sumiyoshi Kai, and the Inagawa Kai. These major syndicates have a huge reach and influence. They often compete with each other, but sometimes they also cooperate. Their world is complicated, with its own rules and power struggles, much like any large corporation, but with far more dangerous consequences. Learning about the Yakuza is important. It helps us understand a hidden part of Japan. It shows us how tradition and crime can mix in surprising ways. Their story is not just about violence or illegal activities. It is also about community, identity, and how a society deals with those who live outside its normal rules. They are a contradiction. Criminals who sometimes claim to uphold justice. Outlaws who have a deep sense of belonging to their own kind. Their presence has shaped Japan in ways many people do not realize, making them a fascinating subject to study. The Yakuza did not just appear overnight. Their story begins a long, long time ago, maybe 300 or 400 years back, during Japan's Edo period. This was a time of samurai warriors and shoguns. Society was very strict. If you didn't fit in, life was hard. Two kinds of groups from this time are seen as the ancestors of the Yakuza. These were the Bakuto and the Tekiya. They were not called Yakuza then, but they laid the groundwork for what was to come. They were people living on the edges of society. The Bakuto were gamblers. They ran illegal gambling dens, often in abandoned temples or shrines, or at local festivals. Gambling was forbidden, but many people still enjoyed it. The Bakuto made money from this. They were tough people, and they often cheated. The name Yakuza itself is said to come from a losing hand in a card game. Ya, which is 8, Ku, which is 9, and Sa, which is 3, which adds up to 20, a worthless score. This name suggested they were useless, like a bad hand in cards, or that they were people who dealt with bad luck and uncertainty. The Tekiya were different. They were peddlers, traveling salesmen. They sold all sorts of goods at festivals and markets. Some sold cheap or stolen items. They formed groups to protect their businesses and control selling territories. This was important because markets could be chaotic. The Tekiya groups created order, but it was their own kind of order. They settled disputes among themselves and protected their members from outsiders. They developed strong bonds and hierarchies, much like the Yakuza would later. They were often seen as rough, but they provided a service. Both the Bakuto and Tekiya were considered outcasts. They were not farmers, merchants, or samurai, the main classes of society. They lived by their own rules. They often recruited people who had nowhere else to go. Disgraced samurai, landless peasants, or those who simply didn't fit the rigid social structure. These early groups provided a sense of belonging and a way to survive for people on the fringes. They were the first seeds from which the complex Yakuza organizations would eventually grow, adapting to the changing times, but keeping some of these early characteristics. The early Yakuza groups, the Bakuto and Tekiya, formed for simple reasons. Life was tough for people who did not fit into Japan's strict society. These groups offered a place to belong. They also offered protection. In a world where the official authorities might not care about outcasts, these groups looked after their own. They created their own rules and their own systems of justice. If someone had a problem, they might go to the local group leader instead of the government officials, especially if they were part of the underworld. These groups also helped to control certain activities. The Tekiya, for example, managed the stalls at festivals. They decided who could sell what and where. This prevented too much fighting among sellers. It created a kind of order, even if it was an unofficial one. The Bakuto controlled gambling. They made sure debts were paid, sometimes using force. In a way, they were providing services that the official society did not or could not provide in these specific, often marginalized areas of life. They filled a vacuum of power and regulation. The members of these early groups often shared a common background. Many were poor or had been rejected by their families or villages. Joining a Bakuto or Tekiya group gave them a new family. It gave them a sense of identity and purpose. The leader of the group became like a father figure. The other members became like brothers. This strong bond was very important. It helped the group stay strong and survive. This feeling of brotherhood and familial structure would become a core element of the Yakuza. So the Yakuza formed because there was a need for belonging for outcasts, a need for protection in a harsh world, a need for order in areas that official society ignored or couldn't manage. They were not created by the government. They grew from the bottom up, from the streets and the markets. They were a response to the social conditions of their time. This origin as protectors of the downtrodden and regulators of the unregulated is a narrative the Yakuza themselves still like to promote, even if their modern activities often contradict this image. One of the most famous things about the Yakuza is their tattoos. These are not small pictures you get on your arm or ankle. Yakuza tattoos are often very large, covering the whole back, chest, and arms. This kind of tattooing is called irezumi. It is done by hand, with needles and ink, a traditional method that is very painful and takes a long time, sometimes hundreds of hours. Getting these tattoos is a sign of commitment. It shows that a person is tough enough to handle pain and dedicated to the Yakuza way of life. The designs of Yakuza tattoos are full of meaning. They often show brave heroes from Japanese stories or powerful animals like dragons, tigers, and koi fish. Dragons represent power, wisdom, and good fortune. Tigers symbolize strength and courage. Koi fish swimming upstream are a symbol of determination and overcoming difficulty. Flowers like cherry blossoms might represent the beauty and short nature of life, a fitting symbol for those living a dangerous existence. These images are not chosen randomly. They tell a story about the person and their aspirations within the group. These tattoos are usually kept hidden under clothes. Yakuza members do not show them off in public to everyday people. It is a private mark of their identity within their own world. Showing them openly would attract too much attention from the police and could scare ordinary citizens. However, among themselves, or perhaps in specific situations like a bathhouse, though many now ban tattooed individuals, the tattoos are a powerful statement. They are a permanent declaration of membership and a visual resume of one's endurance and loyalty to the Yakuza path. Another important, though less common today, tradition is called yubitsume. This means finger shortening. If a Yakuza member made a serious mistake or offended his boss, he might have to cut off the tip of his own little finger. He would then offer the severed part to his boss as a sign of apology. This was a very serious act. It showed that he was truly sorry and willing to make a painful sacrifice to stay in the group. While it makes it harder to grip a sword, a historical reason for the practice, it is primarily a symbol of deep remorse and a plea for forgiveness. The Yakuza are organized like a family. This is very important to understand. The boss of a Yakuza group is called the Oyabun. Oya means parent, and Bun means status or role. So, the Oyabun is like the father of the group. The members under him are called Kobun. Ko means child. The Kobun are like the children of the Oyabun. This Oyabun-Kobun relationship is the heart of every Yakuza family. It demands absolute loyalty from the Kobun to their Oyabun. When a new member joins a Yakuza group, there is often a special ceremony. In this ceremony, the new member and the Oyabun share sake, a Japanese rice wine. This sharing of sake is symbolic. It represents the creation of a bond, like a blood bond, between the Oyabun and the Kobun. From that day on, the Kobun must obey the Oyabun without question. He must be willing to do anything for the group, even go to prison or risk his life. In return, the Oyabun is expected to protect and take care of his Kobun. This family structure creates very strong ties within the group. The Kobun look up to their Oyabun. They respect him and fear him. The other members are like brothers. They call each other Kyodai, which means brothers. There are Aniki, or older brothers, and Otuto, younger brothers, based on seniority and status within the organization. This system creates a clear hierarchy and a strong sense of belonging. For many members who may have come from broken homes or felt like outsiders, the Yakuza group becomes their true family. This loyalty is one reason why the Yakuza have been so difficult for the police to break. Members are often unwilling to betray their Oyabun or their Kyodai. The code of silence is very strong. Breaking this code can have severe consequences, far beyond just being kicked out of the group. This deep-seated loyalty, modeled on the traditional Japanese family system but taken to an extreme, is a defining feature of the Yakuza. It provides cohesion and discipline within their ranks, making them, honestly, pretty formidable organizations. The Yakuza have not stayed the same over the centuries. They have changed and adapted to new times. In the old days, during the Edo period and the Meiji Restoration, they were mostly involved in gambling and controlling local markets. Some groups also had political connections, sometimes helping one side or another during times of unrest. They were often seen as a necessary evil or even as rough-hewn folk heroes by some parts of the population who felt ignored by the ruling samurai class or the new government. After World War II, Japan was in chaos. The country was defeated and occupied. The government was weak and there was a lot of poverty and confusion. This period was a golden age for the Yakuza. They became very powerful. They controlled black markets, selling food and essential goods that were hard to find. They also got involved in the entertainment industry and construction. Some Yakuza groups even worked with the occupation forces, sometimes helping to maintain order or fight against communist groups, which gave them a degree of unofficial legitimacy. During Japan's economic boom in the 1960s, 70s and 80s, the Yakuza became even more sophisticated. They moved into new areas of crime and business. They got involved in real estate, corporate blackmail, also known as Sokaya, and finance. They started to look more like businessmen, wearing suits and carrying briefcases. However, underneath the surface, they were still involved in violence and intimidation. This was the era when the Yakuza became very wealthy and their influence spread throughout many parts of the Japanese economy. They were a shadow power. However, things started to change again in the 1990s and 2000s. The Japanese government passed new laws specifically targeting the Yakuza, called anti-Boryokudan laws. These laws made it harder for them to operate. It became illegal for businesses to knowingly deal with Yakuza members. This squeezed their income. The public also became less tolerant of their activities. The image of the chivalrous Yakuza began to fade, replaced by a view of them as purely criminal and parasitic. Their numbers started to decline, but they did not disappear. In modern Japan, the Yakuza are still active, but their work has become more difficult and often more hidden. Traditional sources of income like illegal gambling, protection rackets, where businesses pay the Yakuza protection money to avoid trouble, and loan sharking continue. These are classic Yakuza activities. They might run hidden casinos or lend money at extremely high interest rates to desperate people. If someone cannot pay, the Yakuza will use threats or violence to get their money back. These methods instill fear and ensure compliance. Drug trafficking is another major area for some Yakuza groups. While Japan has very strict drug laws and relatively low rates of drug use compared to some other countries, there is still a market. The Yakuza are involved in smuggling and selling illegal drugs like methamphetamines, which are a significant source of profit. This activity is one of the main reasons the police fight so hard against them, as drug-related crime causes significant harm to individuals and society. It also starkly contrasts with any claims of chivalry or protecting the community. The Yakuza have also moved into more modern types of crime. This includes things like fraud and cybercrime. They might be involved in scams that trick elderly people out of their savings, or they might try to hack into computer systems to steal information or money. As technology changes, the Yakuza try to find new ways to profit illegally. This shows their adaptability. They are always looking for new opportunities, even if it means learning new complex criminal enterprises that differ greatly from their street-level origins. Extortion remains a key tool. This can take many forms. For example, Sokaya are Yakuza who buy small numbers of shares in a company. Then they threaten to disrupt shareholder meetings with embarrassing questions or disturbances unless the company pays them off. While stricter laws have made this harder, similar tactics are still used against smaller businesses. They might also infiltrate industries like construction, rigging bids for public works projects, or controlling labor supply, ensuring that chosen companies get lucrative contracts, often at inflated prices. It is important to know that the Yakuza do not only engage in clearly illegal activities. Some of their businesses look legitimate on the surface. They own companies in areas like construction, real estate, and the entertainment industry. They might run talent agencies or invest in movies. This makes it harder for the police to track their money and their influence. These legitimate fronts can be used to launder money from their illegal activities, making dirty money look clean. This blending of legal and illegal is a hallmark of modern organized crime. The Yakuza have also been known to provide help during disasters. For example, after the Great Hanshin earthquake in Kobe in 1995 and the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in 2011, Yakuza groups were among the first to provide food, water, and shelter to victims. They were faster than the government in some cases. This kind of action makes some people see them in a better light. It fits their image of Ninkyo Dantai or chivalrous organizations. However, critics say this is just for public relations, to gain sympathy and make it harder for the police to crack down on them. These charitable acts create a complicated picture. On one hand, they are criminals involved in harmful activities. On the other hand, they sometimes step in to provide aid when official systems are slow or overwhelmed. This duality is part of why the Yakuza have persisted for so long in Japanese society. They occupy a gray zone where they are not entirely evil in everyone's eyes. This perception, whether accurate or manipulated, helps them maintain a certain level of tolerance or acceptance in some communities, making them a complex social phenomenon. Furthermore, within their own communities, Yakuza groups often provide a form of social welfare for their members and their families. They might help with funeral costs, support families of imprisoned members, or provide a social network for those who feel alienated from mainstream society. This internal support system, combined with their external image cultivation through acts like disaster relief, helps to maintain loyalty and project an image of being more than just a criminal gang. It's a carefully managed facade that serves their interests well. Today, the Yakuza are weaker than they were in their peak years. Stricter laws, increased police pressure, and a changing public attitude have taken their toll. Their membership numbers have been declining. It is harder for them to make money, and it is riskier to be a Yakuza member. Banks can refuse to open accounts for them, and landlords can refuse to rent them offices. Ordinary citizens are also more likely to report Yakuza activities to the police than they were in the past, showing a shift in societal tolerance. Despite these challenges, the Yakuza have not disappeared. They are still a significant presence in Japan's underworld. They continue to adapt, finding new ways to operate and make money, often in more clandestine ways. Some groups have become more fragmented, while others have tried to consolidate power. The fight against them is ongoing for Japanese law enforcement. They remain a concern due to their potential for violence, their involvement in sophisticated financial crimes, and their ability to corrupt parts of legitimate society. The Yakuza's impact on Japanese society is complex. For centuries, they have been a part of the country's landscape, a dark reflection of its more orderly surface. They represent a contradiction, groups that claim a code of honor while engaging in criminal enterprises. They have influenced Japanese culture, appearing in movies, books, and comics, often romanticized. This cultural presence means that even as their real-world power wanes, their image and story continue to fascinate people, both in Japan and around the world. Ultimately, the Yakuza remain important to understand because they reveal so much about the hidden dynamics of Japanese society. They show how tradition can persist even in criminal organizations, and how such groups can find ways to survive and even thrive in a highly developed and generally law-abiding nation. Their story is a reminder that no society is entirely free of its shadows. The Yakuza, though diminished, continue to cast a long shadow, a testament to their resilience and their deep entangled roots in Japan's history and social fabric.